season finale. Thanks so much for all of you who've been tuning in each week to listen to what God is doing both locally and globally. And this week is fun. Not that they're all not fun, but this one's fun in the sense of Brian Dawson, who is our local serve chair, and I are just have a conversation about how God has worked at Community Covenant over 2020. And it really is a love letter to the church. And so if you're a part of Community Covenant, man, just watch this and soak it in. It's a really beautiful conversation. If you're not a part of community, man, I hope you're a part of a church that is doing some great stuff. And hopefully, maybe some of the things that we talk about remind you of how God is working through the church that you are a part of. But man, it's exciting. It's a privilege. So just jump into this conversation. I hope it's a blessing to you. Merry Christmas. So, hey, man, I was thinking about almost a year ago, we were sitting in a local serve meeting and we were kind of talking about 2020 and all the thoughts that we had and the plans that we had. Looking back a year ago, how did you see 2020 playing out? Not knowing that a pandemic was coming, thinking about our history. Talk about just, the missional heart of Community Covenant.
Yeah, so I guess it's just like every year, we get together after going through the holiday burn that we always do, and we sit down and I didn't really think anything was going to be much different than what we've done in the years past. We sat down and we just kind of start vision casting like we always do. I feel like over the last couple of years, we've really started making some headway with some new partnerships and stuff. And I think I was really excited going into this year, right? Because I was just thinking, man, we've narrowed down partnerships that are meaningful and that we can get along with really well, that we've been able to help them with. So, and then there were some new opportunities that were starting to pop up. And so I was thinking, man, this could, every year though, it's like this could be a fun year. But I was really excited going into 2020, just thinking, man, there's some good opportunities out there. And so yeah, it was super exciting as we're talking through just the vision casting of 2020 and where we could, where we were headed with local serve for our church.
Yeah, well, and I was even thinking it was right around this time, or maybe it was right after. Can't remember if it was like this time of year, if it was like January, February. We had that meeting at Starbucks about the garden too.
Yeah.
And looking at some of the dreams and the plans. Although that's one of those things that I feel like still kept rolling. I mean, I think one theme that I want to talk about with you today is, the pandemic changed some plans, but it didn't stop us. I don't feel like the pandemic stopped mission at community at all.
No, and that's one thing is, in my years of doing that, it's weird to say my years doing this, but it's, we've been going at this for 5-6 years now as local serve chair. But, the one thing, I think we said, we kind of joke at it, me, you, and Bob at this point about, are we into too far of our head with some of these things that we're doing? But man, our church, our community just never ceases to amaze me. Just when we think it's going to get too hard, our people show up, man. And Michael Ray and then Takia come in, and she was a godsend to come in and give Michael Ray the support that he needed. And yeah, in the midst of sitting down at Starbucks and thinking, what was going on and the Browns and all those people and
Yeah.
man, they just took the garden and that has been such a blessing, that the garden and what it's been able to do and provide. So it's been fun. It's been really fun.
Well, it seems like whenever I think a main theme for me this year is whenever we kind of hit a roadblock, and a lot of them were pandemic related,
Mhm.
it wasn't so much focused on, oh man, we can't do this. There was always something new for us to do. I mean, I remember the weekend where everybody was preparing to be shut down, where the stay home order came out. I mean, I remember that weekend even, I got wind of there was some folks that were getting jugs of milk from Starbucks stores that were delivering jugs of milk,
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like, hey, do you want to jump in on this and help us? And I remember even like that, it almost happened so fast that it just became its own thing. I think that's one thing too is, sometimes for you and I as in leadership, we are trying to, manage things and direct things and stuff like that, but people are just doing stuff. Like that wasn't something, that wasn't a community covenant thing. That was a few families in our church that just said like, hey, this is happening. Who wants to jump in? And people were just like raising their hands. I got a pickup truck and I got time. And
Yeah. And then you got people like Lana, who, she's over trying to finding restaurants that are not getting and getting, bagels and taking them downtown for Sunday mornings. And I mean, the heart of our church is just so incredible. What people, oftentimes people come up and thank me for, leading local serve, but I truly, when I tell people like, man, this is not me. This is, I'm a vehicle to get the information to you guys. But without our community, like our programs wouldn't go anywhere. And we've got so many incredible people that they just pick it up and go. And it's been fun for me to sit back and just kind of, open doors for people and then watch people just kind of grow into these opportunities and take it and run. And it's been so much fun. And another one, through the pandemic, just how we've been flexible and been able to pivot into things like the food drive. We see those coming, but we knew there was a need out there, and we got with a few other churches around, and those few food drives were amazing. And then to work, then you got to connection with Freedom Fire to take some of the food down to Freedom Fire and see an open air grocery store in the middle of Kansas City. It's just like, don't tell me God's not working in the middle of all this. Like it's just so many things as I look back on 2020 with local serve that just like, while it was a hard year for so many, I think if you're paying attention, you could see kingdom work was happening all over. So
I want to take kind of there's a few things that you hit on that I want to dive into, because I don't know how much people know about some of this stuff. And this is our chance, man. This is fun because it's our chance to really like shine the spotlight on stuff. And most of these folks don't really want necessarily the spotlight. That's not why they do it. But man, I love to celebrate people doing really cool stuff. So you talk about the Lana Jones, the life group she part of. So that's the Hawkins, Jim and Carolyn Hawkins lead this life group, and they've been for years on the third Sunday morning going down and cooking breakfast down at Freedom Covenant Church, which is a church that serves probably about 60 to 70% of their congregation live on the streets. They're considered homeless.
Yep.
And so they have been getting, like you say, like day old stuff from restaurants for years. And what is cool about what 2020 is when that first hit, so that Freedom Covenant and Hope Faith Center kind of closed down for a while. So they weren't able to go down. But there was somebody saying, hey, instead of, coming to this building, we're going to get stuff together and we're going to go deliver it around the city.
Yeah. It's amazing.
And when church wasn't meeting in the building, they said, we're going to start doing this, a few weeks. We're not just going to go once a month. We're going to go, for a while. I think they're going like every Sunday for a little while. So like just raising the stakes. I mean, I remember, and I'm going to be super honest. I remember that first week or so of the stay home orders when nobody really knew what was going on. And we were all just kind of hunkering down. We weren't in the building. And, we're totally dependent on people's generosity. Like as a pastor working for a church, my salary is completely dependent on people's generosity. Our ability to do mission work and this is completely dependent on people's generosity. And so we're kind of wondering like, what's going to happen? All this kind of stuff. Are people going to keep giving? Are people going to, and I don't know why I was ever worried, because and I was actually talking to somebody yesterday, and another project I'll get to. I'm gonna try to think through sequentially through the year.
Sure, sure.
But I had Scott Pierce at my house yesterday, and I hadn't seen Scott for a while, and so he's like in his car in my driveway, and I'm standing, my 6 foot with my mask on, and he's like, "How are things going, man? And I said, "Man, the church is, you know, like people are
Stepping up.
still giving, people are still doing stuff, people are like, I'm really not worried about because this church just gets it."
Mhm.
And so when I think about like that life group, it's cool to see, for them, they had almost kind of got in a rhythm of we're gonna go down and serve breakfast and we're gonna go home. And that was kind of, and then when this comes up, they press in further and say, I'm actually gonna go where people are living. So that's a little more,
Yeah.
of you're jumping over some hurdles of maybe fear or nervousness about, you're putting yourself out there a little more, but they did that. And that to me is like very much descriptive of our church, of this year, seeing people kind of push through even people who are just generous, like going the next step, like not
Yeah.
just saying, all right, we're going to keep doing what we've been doing, but now we're going to go the next step.
Right. Right. Yeah. So I agree 100%. Like it's just to be able to watch, like I said, I can't say it enough. So many people in our church just they honestly that when there's a need, they just step into it. And like you said, I think this year we've seen people, take it a little bit further and just press a little bit further because it was just, we get tired of hearing it. We hear it on the news and it's such an unprecedented time and everything. But I mean, it truly was. And so people just, people were asking and saying and just stepping into these things. And it was really cool to see.
So then as we got into the pandemic, almost right away, so Matt Adams from Westside Family Church has been really great at gathering, you know, mission pastors from around the metro. And so he started setting up these weekly Zoom calls with mission pastors to just say, "Hey, what's going on? What are you doing?" Which is where the food drive stuff came from, but it also is where I think that's where the hospital stuff came from, and that was a really cool thing that I didn't
Oh,
know
yeah.
was
I forgot
gonna
more.
be as cool as it was. Initially it was, does anybody want to make a couple signs for Advent Help up on 75th Street? I just had my car at the church with the trunk open. People would come pick up poster board and
Yeah.
draw signs and come back. And so, on a Saturday, I got to go up and just put all these signs up, and they were so creative, and you could tell people put their hearts into it. But that night, and I want to talk about that first night that we went out to the Prairie Star location. I mean, talk
Mhm.
about, because you were there with your family, Becca and the boys. Like, what did that feel like for you guys to be a part of this thing? Because I'll share kind of my perspective, but I'd love to hear, when you guys showed up with your, I think it was either your truck or your SUV, and you
Yeah.
saw the people and were a part of that. Like, what was that like for you?
Yeah, no, I mean to be able to, also to do it with the boys and Becca and the whole family to and especially from um really Mason now, he's starting to kind of understand these things better than Luke more so, but to be able just to go out there and to support the first responders, the nurses and the doctors at the hospital who, that at that point, even up to that point, we're working unreal hours and just putting everything into it, having it, not knowing if they're being exposed, having to stay away from family, for you could really, when they came out, and there were some that as we were standing out there cheering them on, walking into shift, you could see on their face just the joy that split that 2 minutes of walking into the building, of having their community say, "Hey, we're here. Thank you for everything you're doing." And even my boy, I would look over at and they were understanding it. They could see it, and it was just, those are moments that you can't really push. They just happen, and and to be able to do that with my family was just, for me, yeah, it was, I won't forget just that experience and being with a community of believers, and then being able to just, and then we were able to say a prayer, and it was really truly an awesome moment that we were able to recreate, and we did that for a whole month.
Yeah.
We were able to do that on the weekends, on
Yeah.
Saturday nights.
The word I would use, especially for the first couple, was just emotional, because
Yeah,
it wasn't just seeing the blessing of the medical workers and stuff, but for a lot of us, it was the first time we'd actually seen each other for a while. If you
oh
remember
yeah,
that, it was like
yeah,
people. I remember
yeah,
like Becca hanging out of the sunroof, being like, "Hello," like we're like
yeah,
people are hanging out their windows, being like, we're seeing people in person." And so to me, that is one of the beautiful parts of mission that is, I don't think is talked about enough, is like when you see a community of people that come around and are united by a mission and a goal and serving other people, it's really special. And you
yeah,
kind of got a glimpse of that on that night, because it wasn't just, man, it was such a proud moment to see the church showing love to these medical professionals, but it was also them showing that love amongst each other. I mean, to
yeah.
see them, that we were connecting, but we're connecting around mission, and it just was this beautiful expression, man.
No, I'm glad you brought that point up too, because I think, for so many of us who have been away from our church family, it's kind of sad that it takes a pandemic and to rip you out of the church for you to really understand what the church community brings, that personal connection, And so yes, that first night, it was, you're right, that it wasn't just, while it was about, going to cheer on and support the nurses and the first responders and the doctors and stuff, but to be able to see our church family again. And yeah, everybody was, it was just like, it was such a unique moment, to be able to see faces again, and to come together as a community. And I think through all this, local serve has been able to provide those safe moments for us to join together and see our church family, and provide opportunities to get out in the community and serve, but yet be safe, and be able to see people again, because we're not being able to do that. I mean, some of us are, but some, on Sundays, it's just not the same right now. So yeah, I
Yep.
mean, to have those moments is huge.
And I think that first one was like Easter weekend. So we didn't get, you know, a Good Friday service, and we didn't get
Yeah,
the Sunday morning service, but we got a Saturday night, and it kind of was a worship service. Like it was
yeah,
like our hearts are tuning with God's heart to show some love to people, and we get to be in community in a way that isn't normal. And it was cool because you also had Caw Prairie a part of that. You also have Foundry
yeah,
Church a part of
Foundry.
that. And yeah, it just was. I mean, I think those are the moments where I feel like we got something back. Like for
Hmm.
all that 2020 took away from us, we got something back.
Yeah,
A half an hour that night. And I remember there were quite a few people that lingered. That kind of, even
yeah,
after like we got done with our official like service, people wanted to just hang out because it had been, at that point the stay home stuff had been going for a few weeks,
hmm,
but we weren't used to it, and it had felt
yeah,
like so long. And so to instead of being focused on what we've lost in the fear and the anxiety that is results from that, we got to focus on hope for a minute, and focus on love for a minute. And that's where I go back to, like, as we're in this Advent season right now, these are the words that I associate with what we do with our mission stuff, like
yeah,
you see hope come alive, you see love poured out, you see people's joy, and you see people
yes.
experiencing God's peace in tangible ways. And so, that's the cool. If you want, it's like if you really want to experience those Advent words, go do mission. That will
Yeah.
help you experience those mission words.
And I don't know if you recall that first night too. Everybody had started we hung around for a little bit, and then I think it was like me and you and Becca and
There was a few. I think the Moores were around. I know Larry and Beck
yeah,
came
and
some.
then a lady came out of the church who worked there, and she approached me, and she was just kind of asking like, why are you guys doing this? And so,
Yeah.
just to be able to share with her, what we were doing, and she really responded to that, and she just really appreciated just the fact that we would be out there just to be able to pray for the people, the workers that were fighting. So I mean, people saw, people heard what was going on that night for sure.
Yeah. Well, and then to kind of transition from that into, you talked about this food drive, which we did. I think we did 3 of them.
Hmm.
And especially that very first one, I remember showing up with that truck, and they were like, we were not expecting this much,
Yeah, yeah. So that first one, we showed up and we just dropped food off that one.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, we filled up that whole room,
Yeah.
and Bruce said they were able, and they actually, for that first round, right, they went and they actually delivered, they packaged them up and took bags, and they delivered all that within a couple days. It was
Yeah.
out to their community.
Yeah.
And then the second one, they came up with the idea of when we came to set up that open air market. And so the third one, I mean, that one was just amazing to see, just people coming from, and by this point, we were pretty well into, it's midsummer, pandemic. We're 3-4 months into this, and people were really, families were struggling by this point.
Yeah.
And so to see people we were just holding signs up saying free food, and people were pulling over off of the street and just coming in and, are you guys serious? Is it? Yeah, and just so people, the volunteers, just getting boxes and filling boxes up for these people and carrying them and helping old ladies carry groceries to their car. So that might be one of my favorite moments from 2020 was standing there in that parking lot and just seeing community come together and just help, our brothers and sisters out there that just that so dearly needed our help.
Right.
No one was complaining. That was the other thing. You sit there and these people, no one was complaining. They were just so thankful that somebody would be there to be able to provide these groceries for them.
Yeah. Yeah. I again having that conversation with Scott yesterday, because he said it seems like for 2020, it either was a pretty good year or it was an awful year. There's not like a lot of in between. And I think for some of us who the pandemic hasn't hurt us as much financially, we can kind of really downplay what this pandemic has done. We can kind of really downplay and say, well, I mean, some people have gotten sick, but it hasn't really been when we're doing, the food drives and things, you really come face to face with,
Yes.
here's the folks who it's been really bad for. And, I remember with that food drive, Bruce telling me, and for those of you guys who don't know, Bruce McGregor is the director of Freedom Fire Ministries, one of our partners with this. And I remember him saying when we did the first, it wasn't even a food drive. I think our people just gave before we even did a food drive, people could give money that we sent to Freedom Fire so they could buy groceries. And he was telling me there was a Tuesday that they went after staff meeting and went to deliver. It was a family of like 6, I want to say. There was like 4 kids and parents. They had literally 1 chicken breast in their home for an entire, that was, if before those bags of groceries showed up, that's all they had to feed their family.
Yeah.
And they did not know what they were going to do. And here comes Bruce with, grocery bags full of free groceries saying, hey, here's some people who care about you. It's like, man, that is the gospel, man.
Yeah, I mean, what can you say? I mean, it was just like, again, for me, I think that'll probably be one that sticks with me for a while, is just, that open air grocery store in the middle of downtown Kansas City, and just, I mean, right there, people were just helping out, and it was was beautiful seeing, really. I mean, what else you can say?
Well, and I think like with that, so that was something that we publicized. It was on the news. There was banners and all this kind of stuff. But there's a lot of things that happen that people maybe aren't aware of. And I think one ministry that's really been overshadowed a little bit, and probably some of that's my fault. Not probably, it is my fault. Is so Royal Family Kids. We focus on as this ministry that has a summer camp, and they weren't able to have their camp this year, obviously because of COVID, because camps were just not operating and it wasn't safe. But they really pivoted in some cool ways. They put together them, and I think Joy Meadows was another ministry that also came together, and we're just putting together these packs for kids. They had people writing cards for the kids, and then in November when we were handing out pies to the apartment complex, they were actually handing out pies and a whole bunch of stuff to their kiddos too. And so that's again, to me, that's another example of a ministry where you have a problem, and instead of looking at the problem being like, well, this is insurmountable,
Hmm.
we're done. These kids in the foster care system who, you know, that they were really, that's maybe a story that didn't get out there, but the kids in the foster care system this year, they had it tough because some of those
Yeah.
kids are that are in abusive situations, where that abuse gets exposed is when they're showing up at school. When school, they're not going to school, that stuff falls through the cracks. And so, man, I appreciate Kelsey and her team
Yeah.
who really like said, no, these kids are too important. We're gonna, get
Still
out
figure it
there.
out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Kelsey with her ministry, I mean, it was, I remember the announcement saying that we're not gonna be able to have camp this year. And I mean, gosh, what a heartbreaking thing. Cause I mean, our church really, that's really a highlight moment for our church, is to be able to go to camp and come around Kelsey and help her out with that ministry, and just to be able to go down and do camp for a week. I mean, those kids, it's a ministry that they so dearly need to just
Yeah.
have a week of hope, And so, for Kelsey to figure out and just to persevere through that and still find ways to come around the foster community. I mean, it was really cool to see that.
Yeah. I mean, and just to see, even there were some connections. I think that's one of the things too that was a kind of a cool byproduct of some of these Zoom calls and things, is that there were people that met each other this year that didn't even really know each other. I mean, there were some real networks that were created as a result of being on Zoom calls and saying, "Hey, this person's doing this. Do you think that they should probably meet this person over here?" And so that was kind of again, it's like the kingdom of God will not be stopped. The
Right.
kingdom of God will not be stopped. And in some ways, I think some of the connections that were made this year through the pandemic are things that are going to, once things open back up again, we're going to see some really powerful partnerships expressing themselves in the years to come, which is cool. So yeah, we're praying that they're able to have the camps that they want to have. And I know,
Yeah.
there's Champion Special Needs Ministry as well that, hopes to host camp at our church again this year. And we're hoping that's going to happen. And there's a lot of things like that. So I want to bring up something that is close to the Dawson home. You guys have spent a lot of investment on it, which is Team World Vision. And that's something that also you could look at it initially as, oh man, they really took a step back because there wasn't as many people involved. But man, when it's all said and done, 2020 was a pretty special year for Team World
Yeah.
Vision.
Yeah. And World Vision's kind of unique in the idea that while we are serving families overseas for kind of global missions, we here as a community locally get to also enjoy and come together. And Becca, watching her over the years to be a part of that, and I've slowly started getting in and joining the Saturday mornings out at Caw Prairie to go run together. All the 6K here. This year we pivoted and did it here at our house and walked around our neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so many people came out for that still. I think Nick Maroki, for many of you who aren't familiar with Nick, he's the the supervisor, I would say, of the Kansas City area for World Vision, and I know him and Becca and many of the leaders for the churches were kind of concerned about 20. How are we going to run this race in the fall, the October, with a pandemic that inevitably they knew was going to get canceled, but yet you still have to try and recruit people to come out and train for a half marathon. Half of the joy of the half marathon is going downtown on that Saturday morning and being in a sea of 10,000 people and running downtown Kansas City. And so how do we do that and recruit for going into this season? And again, don't question God's authority or power, because he'll shock you every time. And while the team was a little smaller, I think Becca would tell you that I think they raised almost just as much in years prior, and they're half the size.
Bro, I mean, I was like 15 people raised about 40 grand.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's
It's
like I was blown up when I was starting to kind of tabulate the numbers at the end of the year to kind of do my end of the year pastor report. It blows me away. I mean, I got a chance to talk to those guys from Covenant World Relief and Development and serve globally, and when I dropped our number on them, they were like, and that's not even, I don't think that even includes the hood to coast stuff that you guys did, right?
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you
So
take
how much did you get? How much did you and Becca raise your hood to coast?
13 or 15, I think, is what we got to. We were trying to get to 20 for both of us, 10 for both of us, and we didn't think there was any way, and I think yeah, we got around to 15. And so it's just,
so if you put that on top of what we raise as a team, that's like a normal year. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what we raised pretty close to in 2019. In 2019, we had about like 40 athletes.
Yeah, I think, 40 or 45. Yeah.
More than double what we had, and we almost don't. I mean, that's just incredible, man.
Yeah. It was I mean, after looking back on, I know Becca, and Nick, they're blown away by what happens, like you can't. And then they were still able to put together a pretty cool experience by going down to Parkville down there, and run the park. And so, I mean, things were just happening this year, in the midst of everything, where we thought, man, can we do this? I don't know if that's going to work, or things were happening, it's just been such a unique and fun year so far. So,
well, and even with like, I was kind of looking through my list of different things where even, we've got a cool partnership with Westview Elementary and Olathe, and we weren't able to do our weekly program, which there's still thoughts in the works about doing something, a virtual version of that. So we're still, but even with that, I mean, very early in the pandemic, I think week 1, actually, during spring break, I was emailing with the principal of, okay, our kids are gonna have to stay home. They need notebooks, they need pens, they need, some of these really basic kind of things. And so, again, we have people that were just giving. I think we had said in the month of April, we had said, hey, if you want to give to some of these projects, just give to the Good Samaritan Fund. And our Good Samaritan Fund was like money just was like coming in for that kind of stuff. So,
yeah.
To not give up on these relationships and to not give up on these ministries, even things like Worship Wagon. I mean, we had to take a couple months off of the Worship Wagon just because, you couldn't gather in groups bigger than, what was it, like 10 or 15 early on. But when that started to loosen up, we got a chance to go back down, and man, and we can talk about Worship Wagon a little bit. That was eye-opening this year. I mean,
Yeah.
to see,
Because the ongoing joke for us, since we're the first Monday night, Bruce, he would always say, man, like, yeah, we'll gather about 100 people down here. And I'm like, what? I don't see that. Well, come to find out, over the years, is the first Monday, a lot of these, the homeless, they get their welfare, their checks at the first of the month. So oftentimes the first Monday that we're down there, we get a little bit of a smaller crowd because they've got some money to go out and buy some food at a restaurant or wherever they're going to go, and get a hotel room and get some comfort for a day or two. So our numbers often I always joke like, I don't, must be me or something because I'm not seeing these numbers. But man, this year after the pan, you the I now I know the numbers were that. I mean, it's been eye opening how many more people have been down there just because. I mean, there's just so many more people on the streets right now that are struggling.
Yeah.
So this year, more so than any, it's just to be able to be down there and some of the conversations you have with these people, just to let them know that we see them, we're here. This ministry this year more than any other, I think, has been huge.
Yeah, and I think, that was some eye opening stuff for me. Is there was a couple of those months towards the end of the summer where the longest line I've ever seen for food.
Yeah, yeah,
And and it was, the cool thing is something I've noticed has become more prevalent this year is you have, used to be, you have the Viddle van that shows up and they do dinner. Well, now you have the Viddle van who serves dinner, but then you have somebody else has a car, offloading kits out of the back of their car, and people are bringing down hand warmers. People are just jumping into action,
yeah,
around the metro, which is really, again, we see so much in the news about the selfishness of humanity and the greed of humanity and all this dysfunction. But there's some pretty beautiful stories of people that are being very self-sacrificial, who know they're in a better spot than somebody else. And so they're choosing to use that wealth and steward that wealth that God has given them to be able to redirect it to bless somebody. I mean, that's
mhm,
this beautiful ministry that happens that just people don't get to see that as much. And so I think it's important to say that we've
yeah,
seen a lot of generosity this year for sure.
yeah, absolutely. And I think there's been a couple messages that we've been talking about on Sundays that when we are faced in such dark times, I think we can kind of get overwhelmed, and we're just trying to make sure we're getting through just what's in front of us. But if we can just take time, just and are trying to pay attention, I've learned this year that if you just are looking around, you will see God's kingdom working. Like he's alive and well even through all this.
Yeah.
And this year has shown me that more than anything else, is that through the darkness, like his light is still shining, and
Yeah.
we just got to be looking for it. And there are so many good people, you know in our church and just in the Kansas City area that are showing up, and just and even if it's, and I've seen people that maybe don't have the money to be able to help, but they're just the bodies that have come out and just saying, what can I do, how can I help? And just people are just activating and going out and helping out, and it's just been so awesome to see.
Yeah, and I think in addition to that, I mean, I was thinking about, sometimes I think people look at missions as a young person's game. It's like this is what you do when you're a kid or when you're a young adult or when, but when you get older. But man, we've seen our senior adult congregation really step up big too. I think about specifically, they have really been leaning into the Veterans Community Project, the
Oh
Tiny
yes.
Homes Initiative, which, you know, for a while was just something that our ambassadors group, our senior adults group was doing. Well, when the summer hit, their question was asked like, well, can we use the barrels at church? Once we started coming back into the building again in July, can we use the barrel? So every other month, we're taking those dry goods to Veterans Community Projects. And Debbie Miller is the one that's been kind of transporting that stuff. And the response to that has been really cool. I mean, we've had some Sundays where those barrels are full of cereal boxes and canned goods and all kinds of stuff. And it's like, man, it just goes to show like when you can communicate something clearly and get it out to people and it connects with somebody's heart, this church will jump into that, we'll step
Yeah.
into that. And that has been
Now,
a really cool thing. And even just, I'm looking at my desk here, we're getting ready to deliver gift cards to McAuliffe and Westview on Monday, and I'm looking at my list of people, and it really is a multi-generational list of people, and the ways that money's come in has been super interesting. I mean, you have some that like their families have come together, some that like I know Becca through her business has like done some projects through her business and people have donated through that. I have some folks that just called me and said, hey, what do you need? Let me write a check for you. I mean, I have
Yeah.
that kind of conversation. I have, and even with this, so I had Monday, I had somebody, contact me and say, hey, how much would it take to cover the rest of the spots? I'll write a check for you. I'm like, awesome. It's this much money. And then that same day, somebody sends me an email and said, hey, we still wanted to do something. My life group raised $250. Can we?
Yeah.
And so I called the school. Hey, you got two more families? Yeah, we definitely have two more. So, I mean, that is the epitome of the church, right? Is like,
Yeah.
hey, we wanted to give too. Let us give too. It's like, okay, let's.
I mean, I can't say enough how much I just, our church is such a, I mean, many churches, but I truly believe our church is just truly, they get the missional aspect of just loving your neighbor, and just when there's a need, I said it earlier, that oftentimes we'll sit there so many times and we're like, do you think we can do 60 baskets again? Like, we're asking so much of our people. Like, why are we doing this? And then we got to think about Christmas families right around the corner. And, that's 30 families. Like, I don't know, Tom. I don't. And every time, I don't know why I'm the one trying to restrictions on God's kingdom, because every time, and then this year it's like, it's during a pandemic. I think we need to, ease our expectations. And you got people calling you because we're filling up. And I mean, that first Sunday when because we couldn't do it normal signups, so you just set the baskets out in the foyer. I think 80% of the baskets were gone that first day. And I'm just
In like 20 minutes. It was just
like, what, why do I continue to question every year? And, I'm just so thankful for everybody that's stepped into this year, and what could have been a really, really, really rough year, through everybody's kind hearts and just being more like Jesus, like we're trying to be, have really helped a lot of families out there.
Yeah. And it goes without saying, I mean, we could keep talking and I'm sure we're going to forget stuff. I'm sure I'm going to get somebody said, well, what about this? I'm like, oh shoot. Yeah, that happened too.
Yeah.
Because there is a lot of stuff that goes on, but there's also been quite a bit of this year that has been really awesome to see, where you've had people that will contact me privately and say, hey, does anybody needs help? Or people are reaching out to me and saying, hey, I need help. And I mean, there's a lot of people that will never get the recognition. Their names will never get out there. They don't want their names out there.
No.
That are just doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes at the church. That isn't a program. It isn't something that we are, local mission or global mission is putting out there. It's just stuff that people are seeing individually and saying, hey, I'm going to go just take care of this.
Well, I want to, and I know this isn't about you either, but the emphasis that you've really put back into the
Good Samaritan Fund or the
Thank you
program. Yeah.
So, and I don't think people really, understand what the Good Samaritan Fund has been out there, and all the work that you've put into really tightening it up and being able to help out in that aspect. That's just been such a blessing in so many ways that I don't think, and again, it's not me to highlight on you, but it's just like, man, that program alone has been such a blessing, and for you to put the time to revamp that has just been, I've really appreciated that, and it's been fun to see that kind of really grow this year as well, from all your hard work on doing that. So it's just, there's just so many things I'm sure we're forgetting, that local service been able to be a part of. And my main thing is just, I just want Community Covenant to know, thank you. It's not me or you or Bob or Lana, the team, all all of our team that sat in meetings to dream it, Community Covenants just stepped into it. And, you know, we're just able to share. We hear things, we bring it to the table, and it just goes, you know?
Yeah, may it never be said that nothing's going on at that church.
No.
You know, may it never be, because there's quite a lot going on at the church within. And I don't say at the church as anything talk about the building at all. I mean, there's some stuff happening in the building, but there's just God's people who have been unleashed on the world,
Yeah.
you know, just showing up.
This
So,
year, I think more than anything else, we've seen the church grow outside its walls more so than any other time. I mean, there's just so many programs and things that we've been able to step into and really start looking at, you know, and it's been fun to watch. I mean, I love this ministry, and you know, every year it seems to grow and start to take on another atmosphere, you know, and it just keeps growing, and it's just been so much fun to be a part of it.
well, bro, man, it's exciting to see. It's fun to look back and see what God's done this year. I know there's still more to, like I said, we're going to drop some gift cards off Monday, and I know there's a lot more to come. We're praying for the
Yeah.
day when things can open back up again, that we can get out there and do things the way we want to be doing them. But man, let it never be said that the ministry happens on our terms. You know,
No.
God's gonna do God's thing no matter what.
And I got to stop trying to put restrictions on them. Like, oh, we're asking too much, man, because you know his kingdom is alive and well. You can't tell me that that's not the case after this year. So
Yeah.
it's been so much fun.
Yeah. So for all of you out there who are a part of community, as Brian said, we do thank you for your investment, whether we talked about it and whether it's a ministry that, you know, has a budget line item, or that you get funds, or that it's just stuff that you do because God's put it on your heart, whether it's you taking care of your neighbors or you. We just thank you so much for
Yes.
being the body of Christ, see the gospel that with flesh on. And we're just honored to be able to be a part of what you're doing. So
Yep.
thanks. We're looking forward to
100%.
2021.
Thank you, guys.
So Brian, hey, this has been fun. To recap, we'll look forward to seeing what God's got next. Appreciate you, buddy, and we'll do this again sometime soon.
Sounds good, man.